yeah. Boo, boo, boo. She gon' bust it. She gon' bust it. Yeah. What's up, baby? Tell me how you get the one up on me. Aye. And I know you ain't playing round. You about to have me down on one knee.
Yeah, there you go.
Aye. I got that soul. Now she done came and snatched the soul out of me. Aye. She got that gold. She close enough. She open up. You go to sleep. Aye. Now if you ever get to meet her, better keep it shot. About to make a supersonic man out of you. She go below the belt. You better go for help. Cause shot about to make a supersonic man out of you. I wanna be her man. Now I'm a believer. She used both hands. Now I'm a believer. Yeah. Big gun, baby. I'ma pull it out and shooting my shot. I got a feeling I can bust it, baby. Trust me, baby, I do this a lot. She do that roll. Now I'ma double tap that booty like I G. She take that pole. All the way down that choking sign gon' make me ski. I ski. Yeah, now if you ever get to meet her, better keep a shot. About to make a supersonic man out of you. She go below the belt, you better go for help. Cause shot about to make a supersonic man out of you. I wanna be her man. Now I'm a believer. She used both hands. Now I'm a believer.
Welcome, Unified fans, to week number 4 of UPL's Rainbow Six season. My name is Phil, also joined here by Reese up in the cast booth with me. Sadly, no Scott, but maybe actually happy depending on how y'all feel about that. But we've got some interesting matchups here going in underway between Coastal Gaming and also Team Gusick, which now that we're in the middle end of the regular season here, these matches are actually going to have a lot more value to them in comparison to the earlier matchups that we've seen from week number 1 and 3, Reese.
Yeah, during the first couple of weeks, we're kind of just hanging out. We're seeing how these teams play, kind of trying to figure out some of their identities. Now you get a little bit closer to the postseason, and things start to become a bit more real. The playoff race is currently in motion, and to give you a clearer idea of that, I've got the standings that I can go ahead and read out to you. This match will be up in the Raven Conference as compared to some of our earlier Rogue matches that we've had the past week. Currently, the leading team in this endeavor is Coastal, but weirdly enough, I don't see them on the sheet. I'm looking at the wrong one. I've opened up the summer. I'm back in the past. Fortunate fellow. Just gotta quickly drag over here. I was like, yeah, Halfless, I remember that. Coastal's 1 and 2. Gusick has got a 2-0 record, so we're hearing word from high on above. And a pretty important tiebreaker match, I'd say, fellow.
Absolutely, especially since that top 4 is where you need to be in the seeding for the playoffs. So Coastal Gaming, they kind of need to win this. And with their slightly revamped roster, that could maybe give them the extra bump up against Gusick, which has been the exact same roster since they've started in here. So for the side of Coastal Gaming, it's Relajado, Gohan, Sneaky, Sakuda, and Bumza, one of their newer players, against Unlimited, Baxley, Teddy, Amp, and Narmu. And for Gusick, you might know their entire team as formerly Half-Bliss, but now Gusick is their new home. And then for Coastal Gaming, a lot of these players I actually have never heard of, but I know you and I were chit-chatting off on the background stick. You actually know some of these people from some past experience around the block.
Yeah, I've casted Relajado for a long time. I always kind of have this like dynamic with him where I'm like watching his teams and seeing like, oh, is it gonna be the one this time? Because he hasn't managed to like get up to that level of consistent success at the top of T3. But he's been trying for a really long time, and I hear that there's been some good progress. But if you've watched any of Coastal's matches in kind of some of the earlier weeks, you'll recognize that there has been a change here. Number 1, Nibs is gone. Number 2, Sykes has been taken off the roster. And in their place, you've got one player, Bumza, who I have not seen before. And according to Relajado, has not really had many notable performances, many up-and-coming teams that he's played on. He's mostly been active in the ranked ecosystem from what I can tell. But on the other side, the other new face coming to this roster is actually a player that I've casted a long time ago. It's Sneaky Sobs, who was on the Droolers during AEL Season 2, which was always a really fun team. Not the most serious competition, as you could probably infer by their name, but they've got some talent on this lineup, and I've seen Sneaky Sobs around, so I'm hoping that he starts to settle down on this roster perhaps a little bit more.
Well, I'm interested to see in how both these teams play and where they're going to be playing at. So we'll get the map BIMs up and ready for y'all to go and see where we're actually going to. Hopefully a couple of boring maps are off the board. That's going to be Oregon and Cafe as a couple of key eye finders here, and then the sad loss of both Bank, Chalet, and on top of that Coastline as well, some of my personal favorites. But our decider will be Villa, a map that's played from time to time, but not enough where it can be really repetitive, but you can still have plenty of refined strats, as it's nothing too sporadic like a Coastline or a Chalet pick. It's kind of similar to Clubhouse almost, which is probably why we also saw that map almost get picked, as that was the very, very last ban.
Yeah, and Scott actually stepped out last week as well, so I was here with you for Wednesday, and we did have Team Gusick play in quite the matchup. You could say a cult classic in Rainbow Six Siege. It was Gusick versus IEPs, one of the most off-the-wall matches that I have ever casted, and Gusick... They trolled a single round in that match, and so they stole away with the 7-1 victory. I think this match may be going to be a little more serious. Coastal Gaming are trying to get their season back in order before it becomes too much too late. And as far as this one goes, I'm having a hard time really figuring out which team that I favor, because I think both of these rosters are pretty capable middle of the pack, and they're only separated by a single series win.
I really was thinking the same thing because Gusick, they've got a lot of competition being in top 4 right now. Team Assault is one of those top 4 contending teams. You name it. I think I'm going to actually just pull up the roster right now. Cosmic Wolf is up there, Phantom Gaming, all pretty well-known T3 teams at this point. So, yeah, this match, a lot on the line. And Coastal Gaming and Gusick are kind of similar in terms of just stature. Like you mentioned, kind of just middle of the pack in terms of T3 competition. So, this could honestly go the distance, especially on a map like Villa, which isn't completely defender nor attacker favorite. It kind of falls in that middle ground, funny enough. So we could really see a constant back and forth between these two teams, or just either a one-sided attack or defense for both Coastal and Houston.
As far as Coastal and what I've seen from them so far this season, I think they have played Villa once. I want to say that it was the match that they played in the first week. That was like a Monday game versus Aura Gaming. From what I remember, it was a very decisive game. Gusick are going to fly out here with the Zofia ban. Definitely a bit of an off-meta selection, but we've all seen it. We know what that LMG does, and it's quite an evil force, so I don't completely not understand that from Gusick, who maybe are looking to try to get the works done over there on Coastal. I can't say if Coastal have got somebody that's like a Zofia, insta-lock with that LMG every single round. You don't have somebody like a Doc or a Snake jumping out there on the Zofia. But Coastal have got that ranked talent coming onto this roster, as we mentioned with Bumza. Maybe they have got the insider intel. Perhaps they've been taking a look at the R6 tracker there, fellow.
Perhaps. I'm also trying to wrap my head around the Zofia ban. I think the best thing that comes into mind for me, especially since Momai wasn't banned, is that we're going to be seeing some possible extensions with a lot of shields by probably both Gusick and Coastal. It doesn't look like anything too perplexing, though, for Coastal. The major thing that Zofia is not going to have because we're being banned is that stop destruction with our explosive lifelines. So because of that, Ash will probably be a pretty big pick, and she's definitely much more challenging to wield nowadays. Her R4C received a nerf way back then, so majority of players tend to bring out that G36C. Her Ash charges, they only have 2 now instead of 3 way back when, and she has no stuns. So it's kind of a high-risk, high-reward pick if you bring her, because if you cannot utilize those charges, if there wasn't a real purpose to bring her, as ability kit isn't really as overpowered as it used to be.
So, as far as who's going to be stepping in place of that soft destructor, it seems like maybe nobody from Team Gusick, as they will elect to bring 2 operators kind of in that containment category when you're considering the realm, of course, Jackal and Nomad. And I think that makes a lot of sense here for Coastal, and some of the way that I've seen them play. They look the most promising when they are very fluid, very constant in motion, that kind of play style, and having the Jackal, knowing that your flanks are covered with the Nomad and air jabs as well, I think it's going to be very helpful. And, I'm going to be honest with you, fellow. I would be worried here from Coastal if they start to lose momentum in the early game, because I feel like with this kind of composition, it's going to be hard to adapt and make some sporadic kind of, almost like try to railroad in some aggression on their side with what Gusick are packing.
Looks to be like Gusick are just going for the standard clear out master bedroom and then slowly creep your way towards Aviator in games. I think the biggest pro of doing this clear in comparison to going for a main take is that you get rid of that roam presence on the top floor, and you also get 90 control early on, so long as they're actually able to flush out players like Gohan. It's obviously the first minute of the action phase, so they're only droning right now, Gusick, so they're not going to get into that confrontation just yet, but they're lining up for it. And Amp is also on that cutoff, so in just a few short moments, that intel will be gathered, and Gohan either has to play here to die and try to find some kind of pick before he ends up meeting his own fate, or he retreats to become a nuisance later on. And with that C4 in pocket, it might be the better idea to actually and just run away, hop down on the vault, and try to go on that retreat. But I believe there's also a player of Baxley sitting underneath waiting for that drop down as well. So he's really a rock in a hard place right now, Gohan.
And the one thing about this, though, is you have to be careful as Gusick with how thorough you are in actually clearing out this Mozzie. Because look at the time, just continue to tick away, and the Mozzie goes on drone. That'll be a freebie kill for Gohan, who swings for a second one there, just exploding inside of Trophy. Quite a rocketing way to kick off the game. He drops down nearly a third there, but tempered from Baxley to finally take out the Mozzie, and I think maybe a little bit too thorough for not enough gain from Team Gusick. Never mind that, though, as they'll be able to trade it back with the kill at Big Ben, and then another one there against the Aruni just near Skull.
Things have evened on up. Great play by Sneaky, readjusting the deployable shield to counteract the 90 position that Gusick has now gathered. So this will still be a pretty difficult push to actually going through, despite the fact that you're evened up on the man count. Health difference here is quite substantial as well, with Coastal kind of reigning in on the lead. The only person who's been tagged up has been Sakuda, but he's playing quite passive. There's only about 30 seconds left. Gusick has to explode into Aviator at this point, and which will lead in towards a funnel, and all that Coastal has to do is just sit and wait pretty. They still have 3 toxic canisters in the hands of Sneaky. They have plenty of denial to shut this down, and they even start off with that initial pick to slow down the execute once again. Amp gets taken care of. Nitro Cell will be destroyed, but Sakuda rips Baxley to shreds. It's just Narmu, and he has to run into sight, and Ralehada is there just waiting patiently with the SMG-11. A brilliant defensive hold by Coastal, and a great roam by Gohan, which didn't get cleared properly despite all of the commitment that Gusick had to stop it.
Yeah, that was kind of puzzling from Gusick. They spent all this time, you know, they're very passive in the way that they go for that clear, and then they just don't bother to drone inside Trophy. It just kind of leaves me a little bit dumbfounded how that happens. From what I understand, Gusick are like essentially a disbanded team. It's almost like the zombie that's just kind of slumbering on out, you know, along the road or however you have it. And so perhaps that does play a bit of a role as well. But you got to be droning. You got to be checking your corners, because that's a super common spot to see a roamer. There is not a lot of cover inside of that general area of the map for a roamer when you're not being supported by reinforcements. So, you know, you think Mozzie's not going to be out in the open just sort of chilling in the middle of Trophy. He's going to be in a corner, or he's going to be behind a desk. He's going to be in some sort of cover, and Gohan gets 2 free kills that kneecap Gusick's execute, and they just never fix it.
Maybe Trophy will be a different story for Gusick, but they had such a heavy emphasis on that clear and just weren't able to take care of it at all. It really seemed perplexing, because you had Baxley waiting in the bottom floor, so they knew he had to be in Deer because he never dropped, but they didn't actually spot out Gohan at all. So if this roam becomes another big issue by Gusick, we might just run into that exact same storyline where they're kind of down on the man count, or at least evened on up, and they have no time to work with, no util, and all that Coastal has to do is just sit in power positions and just bleed out the clock. I think the only thing that Gusick has a huge major buff in this point is that there's no smoke up against them this time around, which was a really key factor in forcing Gusick's hand 10 times at that point. So that's one huge thing to look at. But other than that, this is still a pretty heavy roam presence here by Coastal. And again, if Gusick does not clear it out early on or effectively at all, that could be a huge problem moving forward.
We should have a little bit more towards an answer to that question coming soon. Sakuda is droned out, Unlimited trying to put the pinch pressure on him, but it's Baxley who gets the kill from inside of the mudroom. A fairly predictable play there for the Jaeger. Tries to rotate out, but look at Gohan again, proving to be problematic in situations where he does not fully get droned out, and he's able to trade back the death of the Jaeger, which should have been a 5v4 guaranteed with no trade for Gusick, just getting a little bit kind of antsy with the way that they've been playing at the beginning of these rounds, and then it's, you know, a situation where they're set up in the disadvantage. Gohan tries to aim duel Baxley, but loses the fight. Not going to be another multi-kill for him on this round.
Unfortunately not. Still losing out on that buck, though, is very major for Gusick, as Unlimited is your only main stop structure to actually be able to utilize some verticality here underneath to actually remove those Kaid claws, because there really isn't any other way to do that but fragmentation grenades, but Gusick doesn't have any. They have all breaching charges, I believe a set of smokes, and then stuns, so they have to basically rely on those Ash charges, and that's not a great situation for Gusick either, as Bumza just goes in for the swing with the pistol and makes it even situation yet again. So Coastal really in the lead here, as due to the fact that there can be no proper hard destruction, it's going to be a funnel in towards Astro yet again, and losing out on Narmu and also Teddy, as Rallyhada is going huge. I mean, this round's basically over at this point, Stick, unless Unlimited can make a miracle play happen.
We'll see if he does. He starts to push forward towards the corner, and he does end the killing spree that had become from old man Relajado, but Bumza will trade it back to secure a second round on the run there from Coastal. And despite the fact that Team Gusa come into that basement push, sort of as ascertaining control of the mid-floor, they still have a problem. It's a player on the pantry stairs, which is another one of those, like, kind of scratching your head. That's a common position to see a defender. When you lose out on the man advantage, maybe for Gusick, they're like, oh, the Jaeger is dead, so now they're going to bunker back up on the site. On the trophy and statue defense, though, fellow, not really the most common, because there isn't really a solid enough positioning and solid cover to have 4 people on site. Gohan shows up, waves at the Gusick attack, and he gets a freebie kill off the back of it. Then he wastes more time by going down to the basement, and Gusick kind of needs to get this a little bit more under control.
Especially since their team compositions have not been the brightest. Gusick has no hard destruction, so if their vertical play isn't that welly done, I don't really know how they're going to attack this. That was some pretty horrible wording, but I mean, the team comp isn't that bright either. You're going to have to funnel in yet again, and that's been the biggest issue for Gusick every single round. They go on this methodical roam clear, they kind of trade punches up against their opponents, and then that allows Coastal just to set up, play for time again, and just find a couple of endgame picks. That's all that Coastal has been doing these past couple of rounds, and it's looking like they can set up to do the exact same thing yet again, because there's a heavy emphasis on stop destruction and clearing out that roam game. But when you get to actually pushing into the site, you're at a loss for words and a loss for util as well.
Yeah, I want to say it's Chess Club that have pioneered the Villa no hard breaching strat, where they would always make sure that they brought a lion in their compositions. For Gusick, I think it's not exactly the most straightforward comparison to call them even a shadow of Chess Club. Looks like maybe some kind of a blitz play in the making from Gusick. In fact, it is. The skeleton key at the ready. Barricade torn down. Sneaky is able to snatch up one. Amp has got the difficult task of making good on the death of the Nomad, a goal that he won't accomplish. And Unlimited combines with Vaxelite to cripple the on-site presence. Bumza tries to run forward, surprisingly loses the fight to Unlimited, and now Gohan has got to try and jump back into things. Unlimited getting the case down. No Nitro Cell in the pocket for the Mozzie, and with so many attackers, so many angles, Teddy has got an easy job of sending it away. Despite some issues they're getting into the site, fellow, I think the way that Gusick responded to it by doubling down on the aggression, that's always the problem that I have when I see those rushes. It's like you get cold feet halfway through. You can't be doing that.
Yeah, having the advantage in numbers and always having someone to play for that refrag was the saving grace of Gusick. You still had those roamers above that had to come back down into sight, and it was far too late for that to be successful for Coastal. So a great round win by Gusick, but the only problem with that is it's kind of a one-time gimmick. Coastal is going to be well aware of a pantry rush being a possibility. So now when Dining's played again by Coastal, which won't be now, they'll go up above and towards Aviator again. It's going to have to be played completely different by Gusick, almost as if we haven't seen that basement or middle floor played at all. But what we have seen beforehand in Premonition round number 1 was Aviator and Games Room, with that roam clear not being dealt with before the damage had been done, and then a funnel going in by Gusick. So the key thing to worry about here is Gohan. That way he does not become a nuisance and cost you to lose a lot of life early on when going on that roam clear.
Gotta say, it's pretty rare to have Monty nowadays. I feel like the deathmatch meta has just not been kind to the Frenchman. even, you know, when you look at Clash as well, not having a gun can really kneecap you in some of these situations, most especially in amateur play, right, where we very rarely are going to see these super slow, very calculated executes. Well, you know, I'll take that back. Sometimes when you have teams that are less of rank stars and don't have, you know, enough true entries, you do get that. But that's more just because people are being too patient. When you've got super aggressive play, things like Gusick rushing into Pantry and just skipping any other steps, the Clash, not always going to help you. Same thing with the Monty as well. If Gohan is doing something on a roam, if he's hiding in a corner, and the Monty is trying to do this direct site pressure, it might work if you catch Coastal off guard in time, but if you don't, and Coastal just wins some 50s against Gusick, eventually it's going to be like, uh-oh, look at this situation. Now things are technically a 3 versus 5 on the field because that Monty has always got his shield up.
I thought Baxley would have been utilized to clear out the roam in a similar fashion that Gusick attempted, except now you have a giant shield in front of Gohan's face, forcing him to retreat. But Gusick are going for a first floor clear instead, and they're already getting punished, losing out on Narmu's very valuable intel or util. And what? No one's looking at main stairwell. That's such a huge oversight by Gusick. A massive 2K for Sakuda. And like you mentioned, there is still a gun down because Baxley's left alive. It's all up to Unlimited and Baxley here in the 2-on-5, with most of the heavy lifting probably being done by Unlimited at this point, and they're both just kind of logged out inside of Study Balcony. This round has gone quite horribly for Gusick, and just not by checking default angles or really doing anything as a team, essentially.
Well, you've got two polar opposites in operators, the Monty, the man with the shield, and only a handgun to back himself up in some of these fights. And then you've got Ash with the R4C, your ultimate close quarters, high fire rate battler. Baxley is still trying to bait for some kills, and Bumza is gonna just tip-tip-tap there against the shield operator, leaving it up to Unlimited. And I'm sure that Sakuda, as the Ash turns his back, is about to make this another multi-kill. Spots the shoulder. Sakuda works it. Coastal with a flawless round to continue what has been a streak of dominance from them so far in such an important regular season match, fella.
I'm really wondering why Gusick wanted to change everything, because their clear in Master, despite not actually killing Gohan, was pretty good, because the one problem they had was, or is, very easy to fix. Just making sure you drone out Gohan right before swinging him, or at least knowing where he is before actually just running in blindly. But then they decided to do something completely different, something so unnecessary, and it costed them a lot of life early on. Narmu not having any coverage, he was by himself. That's incredibly risky on such a roam-heavy map like Villa. Losing your Nomad, that is a very bad play. But it didn't matter, especially since no one was watching main stairs, allowing Sakuda to get probably one of the easiest 2Ks of his career inside of Unified. That was just basically nothing but oversight by Gusick, and I'm really wondering if this next round is going to play out in a similar fashion. I honestly don't know. That was a very upsetting round for Gusick, in all honesty, Stick. I have no better way to put it.
You know, it's funny that we have that come up, because I actually casted a match earlier in the season, during week 3, where we had the same exact problem. There was a bunch of members grouped up at bot main, and there was, I think in that instance, it was a Wamai, or maybe, no, it was a Wamai. It was Noodle on Cosmic Wolf against Aura, and maybe I could get this onto the stream, like, after the match is over or something. We could go over it. But essentially what Noodle does, he just sits at mid-main, and all of Aura, firstly, Iana just walks out into the open and just jumps on a drone. It's just like, no, the stairs don't exist. I just hear no evil, see no evil. Gets on the drone, dies. And then Noodle's like, hello, he swings wide, and there's 2 more players just like looking off, daydreaming. And it's almost like the same exact thing just happens there for Sakuda.
Yeah, I'm still trying to digest that last round. We should probably move on at this point. Gusick, again, having to clear out the roam game, as that's been a key factor of Coastal's success on a majority of these defensive rounds. Sakuda already got spotted out, but he's quick to relocate. That way that information is now dried on out. Appears that Gohan has now been located as well, and there goes the Inox scan directly on towards the Jaeger. So at any given moment, Gusick should be applying more and more pressure, but they're still just kind of teetering outside of the map, or building, I should say, as Baxley's the only one that's actually entered, and he's lost a bit of HP as he's trying to flush out Sakuda early on, but just isn't getting all that lucky in that endeavor. A lot of time being wasted here, and at this point, it's another situation where Coastal, they're just playing positions to die or waste a major amount of time, and they're already being successful in that with really not having to do all that much heavy lifting up until now, as Gohan finally gets into a bit of a gun battle, but still wins the fight with the pistol at hand. A beautiful shot on towards Amp. He'll finally be traded out, but Reese, the damage has already been done, like I said, and there goes Bumza.
Oh boy, this middle floor roam is just real problematic today. Sakuda being constantly marked by the Inox doesn't seem to have made much of a difference as the Aruni tries to run into the gun sights of Unlimited, a play that earns her absolutely no plaudits from me. Sakuda starting to step back as Baxley has the cutoff. Theoretically should be a 3-versus-1 brewing, and no, it's not! As Sakuda just absolutely destroys Baxley. Teddy's on a sliver of HP as the Jaeger just rifles his way through the bathroom, and Unlimited in a very similar state with not a lot of health, not a huge mandate. Though he's got utility, he's out of drones, he's gonna shoot a random breaching round into the window, and where's it going now, fellow?
Tack timeout? Rotation, maybe? I don't know. It appears that Coastal's also watching for this possible rotation, too. This is only a matter of time for Meets' demise. Yep, right on schedule. Sneaky always being on time for the kill. They'll get a pretty easy one there with the MX4 Storm. Again, Team Gusick, the roam game, or roam clear, being the biggest difficulty for them. And I think they just need to be more aggressive. The one round where they were actually aggressive, Reese, they had a pretty successful round. They've got the utility to actually have a quick clear. They've got the Jackal, which is giving them constant information. They have stun grenades. They have all of this util, but they're not using it. They're only using the Inox, and then they're just sitting outside waiting for Coastal to overextend, and that only happened once. And it didn't even matter because, like you mentioned, the HP differential was gigantic in that round. It came down to a couple of precise shots, and that was all that was needed by Coastal Gaming. Moving into the last round here for Gusick on their attack, Kitchen and Dining, the only successful time they've had here on this first half, and that was off the bat of a rush. And I am almost 110% sure Coastal is not going to let that cheeky play slide through their fingertips once again, and Gusick will have to get their hands dirty and actually clear out this roam, which has been such a huge difficulty for them every single time.
Well, earlier I made this point about Coastal not letting Gusick get a hold of the momentum on Villa. It seems like that's just absolutely not a problem, because Coastal are the ones who have just been kind of slapping Gusick across the face for the majority of this matchup in what is a very surprising result. I guess, you know, last week's match versus IEBs was, how do we put it, not much of a test for Team Gusick. It's, in fact, almost kind of the day off from school, so to speak. And this match, a little bit more competitive, though it's mostly on the side of Coastal. For Gusick to only have a single round win off the back of the rush, that's not something that gives me a lot of confidence in them.
I mean, I mentioned it quite well on top of that. I guess I'll double down again. Gusick, only round success was on that clear, like you mentioned, or on that rush, sorry. Their clears have been quite dull most of the time. And that's exactly how Coastal's playing around here. They're going on a very heavy roam. It will be dealt with pretty quickly, though, as Baxley gets that first entry. He found a small opening leading to a trophy, so they'll shut down one, but then gets nitro-celled from underneath. And once that information is relayed by the rest of Coastal, they'll finish him off. I'm pretty sure Relihada is aware he managed to down him out, so it's only a matter of time before he gets finished off. So not a lot of map control being gathered here really by Gusick without someone on the side of Coastal just waiting patiently for them to move just an inch or two more for them to finally get taken care of. Still plenty of intel being gathered as well by both Coastal and Gusick, and for the time being, we're just at a bit of a stalemate as that verticality has not been established just yet, but it's only a matter of time before it happens.
Should be the res coming in fairly shortly. I don't know what Teddy's doing. He's jumping up on the table, seeing if maybe anyone is below. Coastal did have somebody nearby, but Bumza does not have a direct line of sight through the verticals. Of course, it's in Mudroom, and that's a concrete rooftop. The Sledge now finally back up, or even the Jackal, excuse me, the Sledge one providing that support. Starting to take incremental bits of damage across their roster. Baxley will be sent to 20 HP. That's not going to matter much as he can continue to use the Inox from safety, and all the C4s have been used as well here from Coastal, despite the in-game overlay trying to trick you, or maybe it hadn't been true, and the overlay, the one time it is telling the truth, is because Sneaky had a pre-placed Nitro that he calls in for a Hail Mary kill against Amp. There's the second on the round. In from Unlimited, as Coastal, Relajado now facing immense pressure with no rotation here inside of jail, and Bumza away from the site, again, on very low HP. It's looking like Gusick have got the formula finally identified. It's a real shame it didn't happen earlier in the game. There will be one from the Jackal onto Relajado, relegating Bumza to the 1 versus 3.
Yep, well, there he goes. Now it's an OV3. I was going to mention, Case is still in the hands of Gusick, so they can easily go for a plant, as they know Rooney's off-site at this point. Yep, for once, it was actually a methodical clear by Gusick, and it was actually Coastal making the mistakes. Having that pretty big opening leading from trophy entrance right into Deer was a pretty big issue, and Gusick punished accordingly to that plan. So, at least they'll end off with a 4-2 split. Not horrible for Villa when you're on the attack first, but I feel like Gusick could have done a lot better if they had just been more aggressive on their roam clears, and the one time we actually saw that happen, shockingly enough, it worked. But maybe, like I mentioned earlier, it'll more or less be a one-sided affair between both Coastal and Gusick as the sides have finally switched, and we're already seeing a very wild card pick here on the cap can by Baxley off of Smoke. I'm not going to lie to you, Reese, but I quite like that pick.
Yeah, I suppose I should let you in on some of the vernacular that we've developed with the cap can. At least myself and Chief are calling the situations where you stack up a bunch of different cap cans on one door to try to insta-kill somebody. We're calling that a hive, because we couldn't think of any other better word, because the literal translation of cap can in Russian is just trap. Chief said hive, and we're just kind of going with that. Have you seen somebody die from a cap can trap in one go yet?
I've not had the luxury of casting it while it happened, but I've seen it before on highlights, so
yeah,
it
I
can
think
work.
I can't say if it was, might have been the Monday game. It might have been, I'm not sure. My memory is fading, but I know I have seen it. It was on the Clubhouse or something like that. And the cap can, oh, it's Corbeck as well. I think I was casting with, so it must have been Thursday last week that it happened with. Corbeck really doesn't like it. Corbeck says that you should place them very efficiently rather than trying to get lucky and stack them all up in one spot.
I mean, it's kind of how you look at it, I suppose, but I don't know. It's kind of just however you like playing Capcan, I suppose. And speaking of Capcan, Baxley already starts throwing bullets at Sakura, essentially. He's on about 1 HP and just wide swings him without any proper intel, allowing Gusick to get that first entry pick, and Baxley respectively falls back. Doesn't want to get refragged after finding such a massive kill. That's one of your only few sets of fragmentation grenades. That's a huge loss of util there, but eventually he'll be refragged by Bumza as he's waiting around the red stairwell area. So you lose one of your only couple of nitro cells, but I think in this current moment here, Reese, I think having the Sledge dead in comparison to Baxley that has already put down all of his util, it's probably a bigger price to pay here for Coastal in comparison to what Gusick has already lost.
Yeah, I'm liking the way that Coastal have developed their cuts. I do have a bit of a problem with Sakuda trying to wide swing without somebody there immediately to trade it out, but you know, it doesn't get punished, and they manage to nail the Capcan eventually, so I can't harp on it too much. I really appreciate Bumza waiting at red in order to kill the Capcan when he tried to step through what I believe was a living room door. Amp from up above with 1 against Gohan. Coastal do not have at all even a semblance of a grip on this top floor. I believe Bumza kind of thought about moving up there. Teddy is going to rifle one off, and here goes the shotgun from the mute for another kill. Narmu has been downed. Sneaky is waiting inside laundry, but Teddy should be aware of this in the intel after the Habana fires her primary will now be relayed to all members from Gusick. Only 45 seconds, though the sliver of the head was spotted through Tetris. Sneaky's reaction unsuccessful for the kill. Starts to march forward, could put some flashbangs downrange, but Teddy pops up, and the fast fire rate on that machine pistol will put in the kill for a defensive performance.
Well, a pretty good performance by Gusick, getting that first initial pick and then kind of holding Coastal's hand throughout that whole endeavor near the middle floor, kind of running them around every direction, essentially. Still having a pretty good roam game above to find a couple picks here and there. And then when you went in for the execute, Teddy just found a couple of nice picks here and there, simply did not miss. So pretty good performance overall in that second half by Gusick. They'll have to transition that same success, though, moving into Aviator and games. And I'm wondering if that pick on the pulse is actually going to be a commit here by Baxley. If it is, I'd actually be quite curious to see how he actually plays it. Maybe he'll go in a deep roam to stop a master clear. But man, that's a pretty interesting pick here when defending Aviator out of all sites. I feel like that's something you'd want to bring when you're defending Dining Room Stick.
Yeah. What's the absolute worst site to bring a pulse on? Like, where does he give you no value? Any map in the comp pool.
Any map in the comp pool? Oh my god. Yeah. I need to really think about this one then. Probably on a map like maybe, I don't know, maybe Clubhouse when you're going bar and bar. Yeah, because there's no soft flooring you can do. There's a hatch and stock, and that's it. But stock isn't even a site anymore. It's double bar. So yeah, that's one of the worst sites you can bring a pulse on.
Really? On a bar?
On double bar, yeah, there's little to no soft destruction you can utilize.
Up in Master, the floor is almost entirely destructible.
That is it, though, I think.
All right. We'll come back to this later, as I'm very keen to see what this 4 stack is from Coastal outside. Probably just the beginnings of a Master overtake. The one thing that is worth noting, they have dropped the Jackal that we saw in earlier Gusick compositions on their attack. Instead, they will make the decision to bring Iana. I agree with that. I don't feel like the Jackal skin was really ever very much use for Gusick. And that's not born entirely out of the operator's fault. Gusick just didn't really seem like they knew what to do when they had the Jackal. It was almost like somebody sends you $1 billion and you just don't know what to spend it all on. Either way, Coastal have managed to clear forward through this master side as Gusick hadn't stationed any roamers. They do have the pulse lurking below, and Baxley's Nitro Cell will be something to keep your eye on. It seems it's about ready. Called in on the detonation, and that's a freebie kill against Gohan, who chose probably the worst spot to drone.
Well, at least I was right on the prediction. Baxley started around near kitchen to try to look around near the master push and then just waited patiently for someone to sit still for a long enough time to rip the C4. And he found success on towards Gohan. So not a horrible pick at all, especially since those Twitch drones could have been utilized to help break the mute jammers, allowing Sneaky to actually do his job. But at least Coastal still have a couple of frag grenades to maybe clear through those. But they got to get through the ADSs and shields before they actually want to remove the mute jammers. That way it's going to be a little bit easier to get rid of hunting. Still about a minute or so on the board. Coastal not in the worst situation here, but they need to both A, get that hard destruction down, and B, find some kind of refrag.
Seems like they are kind of being pestered with bullets through the floor, or perhaps even the drone hole, whichever one it was. Baxley is still on the run. Cardiac sensor calling in all of that information, and so now he'll try to rotate. He's going to try to flank from Astro. Relajado, he's got an air jab left in pocket, which kind of puzzles me. I'm not sure what he plans to do with it, but the pulse would be a major consideration now that Coastal had managed to even the odds. What is now, in effect, a 3 versus 4 on the objective, but Baxley about to call down A Thumb of God from inside Master. Relajado with another pickup. The Pulse might be a little bit too passive here, fella. I think he needs to kind of hustle up. Still hasn't struck, but there it is finally. And his teammates, the supporting cast, are going to make sure this round does not go off the rails. Bumza with less than 50, with no control of the diffuser. Does have 2 grenades, but with only 15 seconds, I don't imagine he's going to get much mileage out of them. Spots Amp almost able to take him out on a sliver of HP. The Alibi will survive. So finally, tie the scores in what has been a bit of a comeback for Team Gusick.
Yeah, late epic comeback so far for Gusick. Their explosion at the very end to stop the execute was pretty good overall. Just setting yourself up, you know there's only a handful of areas that Coastal can actually attack from, especially since they didn't get that hard destruction down quick enough to enter through hunting. It just allowed Gusick to find a couple of vital picks. Baxley eventually managed to make his way from behind near Statuary, although it did take a lot of time. It was there just barely in enough manner to get that pick, and it turned down in a 1v3. You can't do all that much in a 1vx with very limited time and very little anything really. So a great defensive hold by Gusick, and not that horrible of a start, just to lead a couple of worries there for Coastal Gaming when trying to clear out both the roam game and also just get themselves prepared for the execute. It really felt like they were a bit strained on time. Moving on now to Trophy Room and Statuary here for Gusick, as they've been doing pretty well on their defenses so far. It looks like they'll again go on a bit of a light roam and just have a really heavy amount of util established for their anchor holds. That way, once they come back from doing this heavy roam, getting a few picks here and there, like I mentioned earlier, trading jabs with their opponent, they'll be set up again in key positions just to slow down and shut out Coastal entirely to deny another flawless execute.
Yeah, I don't know what's really gotten into Coastal in the second half. Doesn't seem like their attacks have been particularly shiny, and just some of the aspects that have gone down. Less than amicable entry performance. In fact, you've had Baxley as the one to start things off in both rounds in a row. We'll go to and stat as Baxley tries to put in another opening kill, but this time Sneaky is hot on the money for the shutdown. In fact, no members of Coastal taking any damage. I have seen that situation go very differently in a UPL match before. You always need to worry about how closely together you're stacked up out on that veranda, because one Nitro Cell could easily mean a round that just completely drives off the edge right at the start.
Yeah, I don't know why Baxley just swung that pretty willingly, unless he was going to go for a C4 toss. Yeah, just a minor amount of tomfoolery. I feel like Gusick is getting a little too comfortable on this defense, where they're going to start making some major mistakes that don't seem that bad on paper. Like, yeah, you've lost your roamer who's meant to die at some point eventually, but wow, what a damn good shot onto Unlimited by Sakuda. But it just slowly leads up to this avalanche of defeat. And because Sakuda just found that lovely shot so early in the round, because that roam game was nullified so early, it allows this 5-on-3 situation. Coastal just about ready to get this execution underway. And now Gusick, they're kind of twiddling their thumbs and wondering, how are we going to stop this when we have such a huge deficit? It's more or less going to come down to the C4s that they have put in their back pockets and maybe those toxic babes, but there's still plenty of time to burn through that util here, Reese.
Well, Amp chose a very odd angle. Doesn't seem to have mattered much in the overall round space, as Coastal finish up with what they had started, dropping all the bodies. And it's funny how that works. One player's over-aggression at the start of the round cascades into an overwhelming series of advantages for Coastal when they push to the site, though Gusick had played well through those past 3 rounds. When it comes to the way that they defended Trophy and Statue, that one left me a bit dumbfounded. The Goyo, that was not a common position. Prone on the bed, didn't at all hear the drone. It makes me wonder, did his headset die? Because the drone was in there, like, spinning around in circles, like going left, right, left, right, left, right, turning, adjusting, pinging, like, I don't know how he didn't hear that, and then somehow he survives when the first player tries to spray him down through the window. Dies anyway because he's distracted when the offense rush in from Sofa. And overall, just kind of throwing it into the pile of what has been many unusual rounds. It feels like that's the buzzword of the day. Weird plays, Some very off-meta decision-making in some of the events that we've seen. But Coastal are going to snap that momentum in the 3 rounds that have been accumulated by Gusick to try to maybe get back in the form that they had struck at the start of the match.
It's Team Gusick reattempting to go trophy and statuary here instead of going towards dining room with a slightly different lineup. They've got the Thunderbird on board. Huge fan of her when you can bring her out in a good time, I suppose, because just having that health, those health stations just put in pretty good positions so you can come back from that roam game that healed up or just sit somewhere like a rock and never really move. That's always great. And I also like the pick by Baxley here on the pulse because one problem that he had last round was just dying way too early. Now he doesn't have to really, take his battles head on. He can just play underneath with that cardiac sensor, maybe go for a cheeky C4. And it's worked for him in the past, so it could possibly be an issue yet again during Coastal's attack. But it appears that they're going to be doing something completely different, Coastal. They're going in for a mostly master-sided take, starting off inside a closet, and only having one roam clear of Gohan on the Twitch, and he already gets him in an early confrontation. He's on such low HP. Honestly, the better call might be just to back off, Gohan. I think your life is more valuable than you really think it, especially since Gusick has so many players lined up for this.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
They're going to pinch him. There's going to be one that swings him from Aviator. And here it comes.
Yep.
And Amp erases Gohan. And that's a free
Should have
kill.
left.
Yeah, should have given it up. Should have gave up the ghost rather than sitting inside. I don't know what Gohan was thinking there. Again, another weird move in what has been kind of the after-party match post-Halloween. Door, window even, suddenly opened up. Baxley is going to hug up tight to the wall, and yes! Coastal drone it! You'll remember earlier in the game, Gusick didn't drone the player that was roaming bottom pantry. And this time, now they're aware of it, and Bumza is going to start to step in, blocks off the angle. Baxley not allowed to get the kill. The Sledge is going to chase him down in the pulse. Running and ducking for cover. Tuck. Hard left. Ooh, Sakuda caught in a bit of a timing jiffy. And Baxley starting to back off, though. Teddy contributes one as well, and the kills are entirely in the favor of Team Gusick. Doesn't matter that they drone out the player on Pantry because they can't shoot their guns.
Okay, another just spurt of kills coming out for Gusick. Flawlessly done as well. On top of that, I mean, it just, again, starts with the small things here and there. Gohan not backing off, instead trying to, face his demons directly. He did not win that battle against his demons. He's probably crying in the corner right now. That was really upsetting for him. So now things evened on up 5-5, and Gusick again just on this roam. It's just not being cleared out all that well. I feel like if you're gonna go for a master push directly towards site, you need to have almost everyone there and really not try to worry about the roam game, but I digress. It's a new round, maybe a new playstyle by Coastal, as Aviator is being attempted again by Gusick, which has been one of their better sites due to that same explosion I was just talking about at the very end of the round, where they just find a ton of kills all together hand in hand, and it forces Coastal in a make or break situation where they tend to just break.
Ooh. That's a tough one. Scores are tied. Is this one going to overtime, fellow? Are you kidding me?
I mean, I thought it could happen. I figured it'd be kind of like a one-sided affair for both teams. I highlighted it a little bit, but I was like, maybe not. Oh no, it's looking like it. We're getting into that territory here, Reese.
I suppose we did say it was going to be tough to separate these two teams and who would be the one to prevail, because Gusick have some shooters, but they've also got some players who don't think, and Coastal have got a lot of the thinkers, but maybe not as many of the shooters. And that's not a dig against Gohan, but Coastal have had a couple of moments where I feel like maybe if they had stronger, more confident entries, it doesn't necessarily have to be the player that wins all his 50s, but having that confidence and acting like a gunning team sometimes, fellow, can just be enough.
Yeah. Also, just knowing when to respect certain map control. Again, it's such a little thing, but I really want to stress it. If Gohan really just backed off and just went with his team somewhere else, that would have been a very different round, because there were 3 players dedicated over near Aviator. You could have just rushed site essentially and found like 2 picks, and then it would be a retake game by Gusick, but that did not happen at all. So I'm hoping that just the situational awareness can be a little bit better by Coastal Gaming, but so far doesn't look to be the case. Sakuda gets his head ripped clean off of the rest of his body by Unlimited. So that man advantage is already back in the favor of Gusick in this first minute here, Reese. And again, they're just starting to slow down and kind of just take their losses where they can get them at this point.
The Alibi starting to kind of backpedal into that corner, seeing if maybe Gusick don't check it as thoroughly as they should, and they won't. Sneaky has got his eyes closer to the position. He needs to be careful that he doesn't poke his muzzle around the corner. The drone is going to go by, and a clincher there, but the Alibi does manage to sneak her way back into the site, and they fail to collect upon the kill. So now facing down the opening death without the ability to trade, and Relajado really seeing if he could chase this one all the way down the corridor. It'll be Sneaky who does one in. Dropping the hatch, Relajado seeing if maybe he can cut off some kind of a roam threat below. Hard to say entirely. If Gusick do have a member down there, my money would be on Unlimited, of course, as he's one of the members with a Nitro. And could try to put that up, but I think that's his highlight inside of Study. Even maybe it's the Jaeger. Amp is still tucked up. I think he's been in this quarter since we talked about him earlier, fellow. This could be a disaster in the making, because I don't think Coastal are aware of it.
I don't think they have any idea. Any given moment, he could wide swing or just play for time. That drone will eventually spot him out, so he'll go on the aggression, but Gohan's looking the wrong way. It's an easy pick. Make it 3 all in a row. They line up for Amp, and that's the easiest 3K turn 4K of his life. Gusick brings us to match point, Reese, after just an erratic push that needed to happen, but worked so much better than I think Amp probably anticipated. What a bloodbath right outside of Aviator.
Oh, that was something. Gusick are on match point now after the absolute dunk in from Amp. Is he just sitting in the corner? They don't check it. They do check it. I'll retract my statement. It's almost like they sort of figured out he was there on accident, and then he's like, well, it's now or never, fellow. So he swings around the corner, and I think he killed one of the players in Red Landing by accident. Like, I don't think he even meant to do what he had ended up doing. We're playing Valorant now?
We were for a second, I think, because it's almost that time where Valorant gets put on. Fun fact, it's Jag and Los, which Los is my normal duo, but Jag has to fill for me because I won't be available to do Valorant after this best of 1. So yeah, a little funny sneak peek. They're getting the lobby set up for anyone who's actually interested in watching it right after this matchup, but still have a couple of rounds to play out. And looking how back and forth this has been, Reese, I feel like we've got a good chance of going to overtime. But that's if Coastal, doesn't just lose that initiating first pick and then funnels into how Gusick's playing, or just allowing Gusick to make these just erratic plays. I mean, Amp should not have gotten all 4 of those kills. I don't know why Gohan wasn't looking directly at the door frame after the information was relayed that Amp was playing so close with such a deadly weapon too on top of that.
Yeah. Maybe the intel was relayed, but it's one of those, like, Alibi is, like, they just can't get the call out in time because she is so close, such a high fire rate, such a lethal weapon to have in that situation. And it's been kind of a chaotic day today here in UPL. We've just had some real chicanery in every direction almost. And another point that I did want to bring up as well, as not even gonna give that any talking time, is this has been a very one-sided game in terms of who is getting the entries. It feels like finally control of the top floor seems like maybe was a thought in the mind of Coastal, but so far not the most flat-footed attempt in doing so. Gohan not yet ready to pursue forward. Unlimited lurking at 90. And the point that I was going to make is it feels like it's been almost Baxley or Gohan in every one of the opening engagements. Like, this has been a very straightforward match in terms of who is in that opening fight.
Ooh, good thing there's a giant concrete wall separating Gohan and that Nitro Cell. It was a lot farther in comparison. It sounded closer, I guess, but I guess I'll need to get my eyes checked later on, or maybe my ears too. Maybe I'm going half deaf, as a lot of Siege players tend to do that with listening on everything full blast. Anyways, Gusick still have a pretty good foothold up above, as I think Baxley's still on some sort of roam. No, it's actually Unlimited playing near 90. He goes for the wide swing, and Relihado has no idea he's playing up there. That's a freebie for Gusick, and now you have to worry about that top and now bottom presence as well. A great C4 tossed and lined up by Baxley forces a 2 versus 4 with Coastal at the back end of this man disadvantage. They're going to have to really start working these picks, and I don't think Gusick is really going to get them the time of day here, really, Reese, as there isn't much time left to A, get those picks, and B, not a lot of good positions for Coastal to really find them.
Well, as you say that, Bumza, of course, has to make sure that he contradicts such a thing. Sneaky almost has an opportunity, sends in the flash, but does not decide to hop in. Teddy had jumped back anyway, now healed up by the Kona station. It'll be a memo push for the last 20 seconds of this round. Toxic Babe will fill the air, but Bumza still calm as ever. Unlimited on the attempted flank, starts to step in, spots the Iana. Ibana waiting just close around the pillar, and Unlimited will send it in the basket for a regulation win, improving Team Gusick's record now 3-0. And unfortunately, a bit of a disappointing game. I mean, it felt like both sides had some disappointment. Team Gusick, with the way that they played on the attack, was kind of miserable, and Coastal having kind of some weird shenanigans going on with their second half. Their attacks were here or there and everywhere and in between.
Yeah, there's no better way to put it. Both roam clears by Gusick and Coastal Gaming were not good at all. They kind of threw bodies to the problem, but not in a coordinated way. Like, I understand you need to get rid of those players. You want that man advantage. You want that map control. That's kind of the whole point of going on that roam clear. But sometimes you just got to respect it and be like, you know what? Maybe they're putting too much of an emphasis on those roamers, in particular when they were defending Trophy and they had 3 players guarding Aviator. You could have just probably rushed site, to be honest, and just played a 5-on-2 on point, gotten the plant down, and then now they're the attackers essentially at that point. So a couple of just bad plays really went the distance, and Gusick, they really made a huge comeback on their defense. But I feel like it was the same storyline on both attacking halves for both of them. It just came down to the fact that Gusick just made slightly more mistakes a majority of those rounds, really.
Yeah, never fun to watch a game where it's the team that makes the less very slightly mistakes that takes it, and we will not see overtime in that match. Another little itty-bitty note there as well. But an overall very important game to that storyline, kind of that playoff race narrative that we were talking about. And as the season drags on further and further, Coastal Gaming are starting to kind of shift more into the rear view mirror. So I'm hoping that they can start to get some of those issues fixed up. I'm liking this new addition. I think Bumza and Sneaky maybe just need a little bit more time to slot in to feel out the way that this team is going to play. But that's all from us here at UPL R6 tonight. We do have Valorant coming up next. As you'll already know, it's one team that I'm actually pretty familiar with, but not for their Valorant team. It's for their school in general. Converse University are playing in a... Apparently not Davis. Converse. It's UC Davis. I was tricked.
Oh.
Okay. So we have UC Davis versus UBC, University of British Columbia, which is actually nice. I do know UBC. Converse, of course, their recent championship title in CR6 Stage 1. It's always a fun note, but I suppose for all of you Valorant fans, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. That's all from us here at R6 tonight. We've got more for you on Thursday, but stay tuned for that Valorant coverage that we've got coming up. I've been Sticula, my co-caster fellow. Always a great day to share the mic with you. Our producer, Hypertension, and our observer, Tango Mango Down. Until next time, this has been Unified Premier.